Hello, everyone. Welcome to JSCM Impact Conversations. We are here to talk about impact. We are here to talk about research, and we are here to challenge some assumptions. We are here to discuss how to create and sustain societal impact by using research as an instrument. And I am so thrilled to be joined by a wonderful early career researcher, Lara Schilling, and we will talk about the context and we will talk about the importance of local communities in research. We will discuss how to rethink and reframe supply chain management in research. So, as we know, we keep talking about sustainability for many years now, but the issue is oftentimes we talk about sustainability with assumptions coming from the global north. So, we are actually using global north centric lenses and perspectives. So, today we will try to explain and uncover how we can actually bring the realities and lived experiences of the global south to challenge our assumptions and to create impact with our research subjects, with them, for them. And I'm really thrilled to be here. Today will be a really interesting conversation because time is up. We are here to challenge the status quo, and I'm so thrilled to invite Lara to our session together to talk about impact. Lara Schilling, welcome.
Yeah, many thanks, Hakan. It's great to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. So, just for full transparency, I met Lara last year at Euroma, and in her session, I was really empowered to hear her perspective and her work in the global south. And she was talking about her research and she was explaining how she brings local context to the front line to discuss and create some implications. So, today, now, we will uncover and we will unpack these context specific issues. As we know, context is everything, but oftentimes we are approaching sustainability from standardized approaches. And unfortunately, these standardized approaches don't account for local structures, local values, and local conditions. And then we measure, manage, and control supply chains against the standards and KPIs that we develop in the global north without acknowledging the values and what is different in the global south. So this mismatch is actually quite problematic. And now we want to talk about how we can actually rethink and reframe these structures. So Lara, first things first, welcome to the show. And I want to ask you about your research because you are just not a researcher, you are an engaged academic that challenges some old traditions and old-fashioned assumptions, and you are actually creating impact that goes far beyond publications. So my first question to you, from your experiences in the global south, most notably in Pakistan and Sub-Saharan area Africa, how do you ensure your research is contextually grounded rather than dictated by Western assumptions?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very challenging task. I mean, I was born and raised in a Western context. So for that means to continuously challenge the assumptions I do have. And when I was the first time for a couple of months in Ghana, I realized that I have to relearn how life works. And that also holds for my research, to basically let the local context educate my research. And I think that is very important. For example, if we look into a Western concept of institutions, and then non-Western settings are oftentimes described to have institutional voids, which may hold for contexts and for particularly if we look then on the formal side of institutions. But there are so many basically mutual understandings, behavioral expectations, and so many things that are so rich in these contexts, we just cannot risk to not see them. So I think we really have to prepare our minds when we do research in this context to make sure that we bring these perspectives to the front. I think it's a very illustrative picture is if we look on how people behave on streets. If I would drive the car the same way in Ghana as I do in Germany, it's basically a high risk to everyone, to me, but also to local people there. And this is what we also see then with supply chain practices or also Western theories, it can lead to a risk if we don't embrace the local context, because it's also the risk to basically not see what already exists.
No, great point. Thank you so much, Lara. Which brings us to the importance of inclusion and representation. So oftentimes we need to create theories, but also research methodologies with the individuals from the global north and from the global south. One of the things that I'm observing is actually the context is everything, and we also need to change our language, because oftentimes the constructs and the concepts that we are talking about is not well understood by the context in the global south. This doesn't mean we are more intelligent. Perhaps they are much smarter than we are, but we don't talk about things with the same vocabulary. So this brings me to the importance of inclusion. I have a question for you. So, how do you collaborate with your local communities in your research to ensure their voices and their perspectives are included to shape the research rather than imposing these Western-based approaches or constructs to that context?
Yeah, I think inclusion has a lot to do also with meaning. And if we look, for example, into how research setups are designed, I think very early already, it is important to ensure to understand local contexts, to be close to local communities, but also to be close to local research institutions and industry partners. And only then we can early on already account for that. Maybe two examples. If we look into a more positivist approach, usually we come then with certain constructs and measurements in mind already before we collect the data. But how can I embrace local understandings if these contracts I come with basically embed a certain understanding which may not mean something to anyone? For example, the dairy farmer in Pakistan has certainly a different understanding from value than my uncle as a dairy farmer in the south of Germany. So I think that's very important already in the design phase. And that also holds for, if basically companies try to do and collect ESG data along their supply chain, what do we actually measure and what does that mean to people that we take the measures from? That's one point, I think. And the other point is then also a lot about the point of data collection. So how do I appear as a researcher? How do I let the interactions thrive and evolve? And I think this is then particularly also important in more interpretivist research settings. And I think we cannot underestimate also in that context the meaning of language. Most people in the world speak none of the big world languages. So I think it's very important, if we really want to hear voices, that we speak in languages and do research in languages that are close to the people's heart, because this makes them also open and to see different perspectives. I mean, there are also many logics, for example, collaborative ways of working together. There are local words for it, but this cannot be even described in English. So I think, how can we understand that then if we look for everything, then a word in English? So I think in the data collection, also in the later analysis, it's important to stick very close to the context where the research is done.
It's a great point, Lara. Thank you for sharing it. Actually, what you are saying is really important and really pivotal. We should see research as a longitudinal picture. It is not just one-stop shop or not a destination, but it's actually the journey. So we need to really embrace our subjects, our research context, and we have to embrace them with inclusion and respect. One of the things you also mentioned is data collection is everything, but we need to build trust. And once the people that we are collaborating with trust us, meaning that workers, farmers, so whomever we are researching about needs to trust us. So we are there as researchers. But I always say emotional connection is really important. So even if you do survey research, or you do something different and innovative, you have to get to know the context and you have to get to know how they perceive you. In my own research, oftentimes I see this mismatch between how we think we are perceived is different than how people really perceive us. So that mismatch is actually a really important bottleneck to overcome. And exactly how you describe we should do this, I think is the right actually path forward. So thank you for sharing it.
Yes,
And
yes.
and one final question before you go. I'm so conscious of time. We will keep this short and sweet. But also policymakers and industry experts, practitioners that use our research oftentimes are also conditioned by short-term decision making, short-term goals. And oftentimes they're also really trapped in this global north centric perspectives. How do you think, as the supply chain management community, we can challenge those pathways and we can actually bring our experiences to their, let's say, spotlight to somehow change the way policy and practice is handled?
Yeah, I think that's a really tough challenge. And I mean, I think time is an important aspect, as you mentioned already earlier, also in the research process in order to understand context. So I think that is definitely important. But if we now look more into the practices and what can we maybe infer from that? I think it is very important that in this global context, we look for local solutions. And I don't think that this means we don't need regulations and we don't need accountability of companies for what they do in their supply chain. I pretty much think that we need that. However, I think that the consequences of and the effects of these regulations, however they may unfold in non-Western contexts, I think there we have to be very, very conscious of the local context. For example, and that means then also that they are very different, the approaches being taken. It's not there is this homogeneous concept of non-West, but it is then to look really into the specific context. And for example, if we look a lot on sustainability aspects, I think we can learn so much from local communities in that terms, because I mean, sustainability, the word doesn't mean anything to them. However, they practice it, but they practice it differently. For example, Akan people who live in what is today Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, they see family completely different. It's not like a nuclear concept, but it's more broader among many generational ties, particularly on the mother's side, because they believe that basically the blood of a human being comes from the mother's side. So these are very close ties from the mother's family side. And then these responsibility and resources are passed throughout generations. And I think, for example, these ties have to be strengthened. And these are approaches how sustainability can be promoted in these regions, but maybe it's not with this or that indicator that may not mean anything. That doesn't mean that we don't need the indicators on a global level, but we have to transport them differently. And I think that this can be a very powerful tool, but I think it takes a lot of time and resources in order to get these local understandings. But I think it's very much worth to go the route. Otherwise, we waste all our efforts that are currently done in order to take more responsibility in supply chains. But yeah, I think that's a long route to go. But yeah, I'm very hopeful that that can bring us somehow further.
Lara, you're really inspirational. Thank you so much. You said wonderful things. So my takeaway is policymaking is important. We need policies, but those global policies have implications for the local context. So we need to find a way to really bring local perspectives to the front line to influence the policymaking to make sure every voice is represented and every voice is included. And you are doing fantastic work in the field, on the ground, and you bring those voices to the spotlight. So thank you very much for also influencing policymaking and practice with your local observations. And this is the way forward to make sure meanings language and constructs are becoming more and more plural, and those plural voices and values will be shared and cherished. Lara, thank you so much. So everyone, you will be able to see the link to Lara's work. She has done some fantastic job in Pakistan, Global South, Sub-Saharan Africa. So her work and her papers are really inspirational. So take a look. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. So Lara, thank you very much for joining us. JSCM Impact Conversations.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Hakan. It was really lovely to be here with you, to have some chats on whatever is close to our hearts, and yeah, try to spread what we do a little beyond. Yeah, that's great.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. See you at the next episode.
Bye-bye.